Hello, my name is Ryan Payne, and I am presenting on analyzing factors that contribute to food insecurity among the elderly population in the United States. So this is the overview of my abstract, but I will summarize it for everyone. So among the U.S. households with elderly living alone, 9.5% experience food insecurity. And while previous studies have demonstrated an association between depression and food insecurity, this project aimed to look at the association specifically within the elderly population. And so I used data from the 2013 to 2014 National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, also known as NHANES for short, to evaluate the associations among food insecurity, depression, chronic illness, and cognitive functioning among adults over 60 years old. So statistical analyses involve the calculation of crude and adjusted odds ratios for all relationships, along with t-tests, and multiple linear regression models for cognition-related test scores. And along with this, I had the ability to adjust for any confounding variables, and results indicated that food insecurity was significantly associated with depression, and depression significantly increased the odds of chronic illnesses and cognitive impairment. And so after doing all these tests and analyses, I came up with the idea that the best solution would be to address food insecurity and depression, would to implement senior companion programs that would benefit elderly populations, as these help with social isolation and loneliness going forward. So I have two different parts of my research questions. So the first part, as you can see in the chart, is that it shows an association between food insecurity and the following among elderly individuals in the US. And so if someone is identified as being food insecure and they're within the population that I'm studying, I wanted to see if there was a correlation between food insecurity and cognitive functioning, onset of chronic illness, decrease in physical activity, and depression. And then as you can see on the screen, there's a arrow between depression and physical activity. And I just wanted to see if people within depression, could this lead to a decrease in physical activity? And then going off of that, this chart follows up on that, but looking more so between food insecurity, and then if people are already identified as being food insecurity and they have depression, what could this lead to? And so this chart shows the association between people who are identified in the study population of being over the age of 60. And if they already have food insecurity and depression, could this lead to poor physical health, onset of chronic illness, and then changes in eating and sleeping patterns? So for my results, I had numerous different figures and calculations and different tables, as this is more described in my poster that I will be presenting on CSA Day, but I will just highlight three different plots that I calculated. And so the first figure you see here is the percentage of cognition test scores compared to the number of people who are diagnosed as being food insecure. And so each category on the y-axis represents a cognition test people were asked to perform to test their cognitive memory. And so that's where the names delayed recall, animal fluency, and digit symbol comes from. It's just the names of these tests. And so the results from this says that people who were food insecure had lower scores compared to people who were food insecure. And I think another thing to note is that this was before anything was adjusted. So it doesn't take into consideration their health, their education, where they are within their age, their race, and their socioeconomic background. And so this is one of the odds ratio graphs that I have. And this one's looking at the adjusted odds ratio of depression on cognitive impairment, chronic illnesses, and depression. And there was a statistical significance in cognitive impairment, confusion, heart attacks, chronic heart disease, and congestive heart failure. And the reason why I chose to focus on these diseases were because this was what NHANES, the health survey, was testing or asking individuals at that time during that year. And so the confidence intervals of these variables does not include one, which means depression is likely to occur as a result of these variables. And my last figure that I wanted to show is the prevalence of conditions compared to the number of people who are diagnosed as being food insecure. And so as you can see, for every condition, there was a higher percent of people who were food insecure compared to people who were food secure, meaning that they basically fall in that category of being food insecure among the population of elderly people. And so I think it's really interesting to see how within the depression category there's a great difference between the two. And there's also another figure that goes into more detail about this in my poster. But this one just shows how the numbers are drastically different between each condition that people have. And so it also shows that food insecurity does affect people's mental and physical health. And so the best thing that me and my faculty mentor, Dr. Perez Hadrich, came up with the idea to make a chart to highlight the figures and the tables. So we came up with the idea to make a chart, and this is all color coded, and each line shows if food security and depression increased, decreased, or did not have effect on the results. And so in the middle, you can see that food insecurity did have a effect on depression, as that was seen in some of the tables earlier. But it was also interesting to see that, for instance, food insecurity did not have decreased the odds of stroke. So that was one of the chronic illnesses that it did not have an effect on. But in regards to other, if you look on the right side, depression did have increased the odds of chronic illnesses of heart failure, heart attack, and heart disease. And then when it comes to cognitive function, depression did increase the odds of people having lower cognitive functioning around this age. And those are the first three within the cognitive functioning bracket are just the acronyms for the tests that people were asked to perform. And then confusion is just the category of confusion of how it was it was more into detail of how they measured confusion. But in regards to food insecurity and cognitive function, there was no effect at all. It did not affect it. So it was very interesting that performing this research throughout the semester, it was just to see that there were some effects and there were no effects with depression and food insecurity, but finding out that food insecurity has some kind of correlation / effect on depression was not surprising. Just looking at the studies and researchers that I've seen in the past, and especially looking at the time pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and post-pandemic, there was a lot of research to support this data as well. And thank you.